Hello, welcome to Athletic Nutrition and Strength and Conditioning, where you're going to get to learn a little bit more about how you can support your athlete through their middle school and high school years. My name is Sarah Sutherland, and I am really super excited to have the opportunity to lead the Strength and Conditioning program for Aurora Public Schools. And we're going to get into some details about how you can help your children at home. First, we're going to start with a quick introduction about myself. That way you can have a little bit more background and knowledge of my experience and how it's going to be applied into this program. Then we're going to talk about nutrition and nutrient timing, specifically around athletic performance. We will also talk about healthy habits. It's really important to understand the role that all of the hours in the day play towards how our children are best performing, not only in their sport, but just in life in general. We're going to talk about strength and conditioning, kind of the future of the weight room at Aurora Public Schools and what that looks like, and talk also too about the programming for the upcoming summer. And then to finish it off, I did take note of the questions that we had that got asked in the live sessions, and so I will ask and answer those at the end as well. Many of you maybe know me in other capacities around the community. I was born and raised here. My family's was born here, a lot of them, and raised. I'm actually a sixth generation Auroran, but was gone for a really long time after graduation. So I moved away and came back after 17 years to raise our family, and we really truly are here for the school and for family as well. And so it holds a very special place in my heart. We own the Aurora Fitness Center. We own Snackology. I do kind of a lot of things community service wise. I kind of organize and manage Bands on the Bricks in the summer and really do kind of love everything Aurora has to offer. And so kind of wear a variety of different hats, but this one by far is one that I am super passionate about. I've been in this industry for a very long time. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit next now about kind of that background and experience. So like I said, I was from here. I was class of 1999. I was a four-sport athlete because until my senior year, softball was exclusively played in the summer. So I had an opportunity to take advantage of all four of those sports because at that time they did not overlap. After that, it was always I was never done playing at all. So I did continue on my athletic career. I actually first tried out for softball at Northwest Missouri State and thought that was kind of the path I was going to get to take. The coach later changed her mind, and at that point in time, I'd already been set. My heart was set on going there for school. So academics obviously then came first and wanted to stay there for school, and then wanted to figure out how I could still participate in some sort of athletic activity. So I had a scholarship offer from the track and field team. After my freshman year, I kind of missed playing volleyball. And so there was an ad that was posting on the computer about tryouts for the volleyball team, and I went to those and then tried out. Made the volleyball team. So my sophomore year, I was a dual sport collegiate athlete, which Northwest Missouri State is a Division II school, and very quickly realized that that is really difficult to do two sports in college, especially when track really does start right away when school starts, right? Because you're doing all your preseason and you get to indoor. So it was a lot, and I was going to either probably just be mediocre in both, or I needed to pick. And since track was the one that was paying me, that is the one that won out. So I did that for all 4 years, was a 7-time all-conference athlete, and was always just shy of the kind of the national qualifying list. So still highly competitive in those events, and I was a thrower there. My formal education then is in business. I have a double degree in marketing and business management. I did go on to get my master's degree in business, which is why, we kind of have the businesses in town. I have that as my formal education. But through my athletic career, I was always really super active. I always loved athletics, being involved in just general movement, body movement for health, if you will. So kind of what actually happened is as I started my corporate career, I traveled a lot for work. I lived out of a suitcase, and I started to see a lot of really unhealthy people in airports. And I kind of looked into myself and said, okay, is this the path that I'm going to go down? Because I wasn't sure that I was okay with that. So I actually then started to learn how I could be healthy as a business professional And that very quickly turned into a love for personal training. So I did first my own personal transformation, got into personal training. And what's unique and about a lot of industries that require certifications is that it's not just a one-time degree and then you're set for life. Specifically in this area of health, wellness, personal training, every 2 years your certification expires. And unless you do continuing education credits, you don't have the ability to renew that. So over then the course of 14 years now at this point, I have collected quite a variety of different certifications. I am also just a lifelong learner, which fares well in this specific area because we are constantly learning more information about the human body. It is ever evolving, ever changing. We've got new studies that are constantly coming out. And so it's always fascinating to me and interesting that even there are things that I did when I first started as a personal trainer that I do quite differently now. And so it is just a constant journey of learning, reassessing, learning more. And so through that, I have a variety of not only personal training certifications, but certifications that are specific to youth sports conditioning, youth fitness. I do have some senior pre and postnatal experience. Nutrition does play a large role in not only performance, but just general health. So I do have nutrition coaching certifications through Precision Nutrition, a variety of modality specific knowledge, and personal trainer, powerlifting, group fitness, which has actually come in quite handy managing large groups of students, being able to kind of use some of those techniques into managing a large group. My most recent one was I did complete the high school strength coach certified conditioning program. High school strength coach certification program through the National High School Strength Coaches Association. And so I just completed that at the end of 2024. Sorry, that had been a really long time ago. And so I got that. I do still have one big one left on my bucket list, which is the CSCS. This is kind of what would be considered passing the bar exam for lawyers. This is the big test for strength and conditioning specialists. And so there is a ton of exercise science knowledge that goes into the test. It's not just all of the biology and anatomy and kinesiology and exercise science, but it's also how do we apply it? How do we very quickly look at somebody's movement patterns and then know the coaching cues to be able to correct those. And so that is next up on the list. Currently, the pass rate for this test is actually only 40% on the first attempt. I'm not a huge fan of taking tests, especially when I have to go to a testing center and they've got all of the standards around checking you in and you can't take things in with you. It kind of cranks it up on the nerves a little bit. So due to that, I'm taking my time to make sure I'm super prepared. I'm not just cramming to pass an exam. I'm making sure that I am absorbing all of the knowledge that I will be able then to take and apply into our programs at Aurora Public Schools. So that is just what's next on the list. I'm going to get that test done. I'm really excited to have that knowledge and not just the credential, but being able to absorb everything that I need to pass that and then bring it to our students. I have already, over the last year, infused myself into a lot of networking and associations to connect with strength coaches, not only in Nebraska, but also nationally to see what they're doing, what we're seeing. Are there certain things that I'm seeing in Aurora that are just specific to Aurora? Are they actually things that we as strength coaches are seeing nationally? Is it a generational thing? And being able to make those connections, to ask those questions, to kind of really stay in the loop and continue not only my knowledge of the subjects themselves, but then also just having that ability to pick up the phone, send an email to somebody else across the country that's highly knowledgeable in these different areas to be able to create kind of that network. Oftentimes in a school district, you're probably just the one of a couple people that might be focusing in this area, and you have to build out your team to be successful long term. And so being able to not only have the core group of head coaches and assistant coaches that we have here that we're kind of all working together and involved in developing our athletes, but also to kind of creating that network of professionals that are in different school districts is going to be really super helpful. Okay, as we get started in nutrition, there's one really important frame that is a good starting point, and that is this. Just a general acknowledgement that there's obviously 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. We all know this. This is very basic information, which gives us 160 hours every 7 days that we are doing something, whether we're sleeping, whether we're eating, whether we're, on using devices, on technology, whether we're socializing with our friends or our colleagues. There is a lot of time in every single day. And oftentimes there gets a hyper focus on nutrition, the meals that we're eating, which is probably maybe about an hour or so of that day that we're physically maybe eating food, maybe an hour and 20 minutes, but it also gets hyper focused on general activity. And so what we kind of talk about a lot with the students and just kind of want to help frame this conversation is if you did 1 hour of workout 5 days a week, that only ends up being 3% of your time. So we're really looking at performance. If we only focus on practice, if we only focus on the 1 or 2 hours that we're playing a game or in an activity, or even if we focus on the nutrition, that's really not giving us the full picture. And so it's just kind of a mindset shift and acknowledgement to realize, hey, actually, I can make progress towards my goal in a variety of different ways, 24 hours a day. It's not maybe just the few things that are directly applicable to whatever it is that I'm doing. So if we take a look at what our students are doing, okay, if they have 5 days a week, maybe they're in block 0 or a PE class, and then they also have potentially practice for a couple of hours. Okay, so let's say now 5 days a week, they're doing something for 3 hours a day total. Well, that still only ends up being 8.9% of the total hours during the week, which tells us there's a lot of other impact that can happen in all of the different other hours of the day. Okay, so now we've kind of established this kind of like shift in mindset a little bit. Now we will talk about the specifics around nutrition and strength training and all that, but just kind of elevate your mindset a little bit and acknowledge, hey, even though my child is participating, let's say in football, and it's football season and they're doing a lot of time and energy spent on football, there's still activity that they're choosing to do with themselves throughout the day that actually makes them either a better student or a better athlete or can hinder what they're able to do in those areas. Same thing with just in season versus out of season. And it's not about playing, say, one sport year round. You can be active in different things and get a good base of being a multi-sport kind of participant. And it all carries over, but it's what are we doing 365 days a year also makes a difference. Okay, so nutrition. Let's move into some concepts and then slowly kind of dial into the details about nutrition. As we talk about some of these concepts, you're probably thinking, well, yes, I already know this, right? A lot of them are things that we've maybe heard before, but I will tell you that simple does not equal easy. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it already. There's a lot of knowledge that you already have about what probably constitutes a healthy nutrition pattern, healthy eating, right? But that does not mean it's easy. I tell the students, hey, I didn't have a scooters driving on my way to school every morning. I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have dug through the change in my car more mornings than I should have to try to figure out how I could drive through and get a drink, right? McDonald's didn't even open up till my freshman year in high school. Like we didn't even used to have that, right? So it was a lot higher percentage of meals at home. And we just didn't have that option to do that. We also didn't even have energy drinks back then. I mean, it was like the 90s when I feel like Jolt came out and we were like so excited because, oh my gosh, there's actually a pop that has more caffeine in it than Mountain Dew. Unbelievable. And even looking at things today, Mountain Dew doesn't even have that much caffeine compared to, I keep seeing athletes running around with Alani's in their hands. Well, surprisingly, when I asked a room full of students, they do actually know how much caffeine is in their drinks. They'll be like, oh, it's 200 milligrams, 300 milligrams. That is an insane amount of caffeine that honestly no child should be having in their system. Caffeine has no business in their system, and some of our students are drinking 2 to 3 of those a day. It's accessible, whether it's in your house or not. They've got it at the checkout counters right away at Aurora Mall. So I know half of them kind of probably order their Subway sandwich. They swoop in, they get it, they check out with a drink and off and running. But it is a totally different world today than when we all grew up. And so acknowledging that makes it harder for them to make choices that can help them versus the easy choices are the ones that are probably actually hurting them. So Precision Nutrition is where I have my nutrition certification from, and Dr. John Berardi is the kind of founder of that, which Precision Nutrition has a ton of amazing free resources. If you're interested in this, they've always kind of had a newsletter that they send out. They write very level-headed blog posts discussing different areas of nutrition. They would definitely be one to kind of bookmark, but it's just precisionnutrition.com. And it's an amazing resource. He said, if a food is in your house or possession, either you, someone you love, or someone you marginally tolerate will eventually eat it. If a healthy food is in your house or possession, either you, someone you love, or someone you marginally tolerate will eventually eat it, right? So this is just kind of speaking to the fact that you have to kind of see what works best for you. There's a difference between a level of control that you have over your environment and control over your choices. And so it is probably much easier to control your environment because I have no control over my choices. If there are Reese's peanut butter cups in my house, that bag is gone. Same thing with Cinnamon Toast Crunch or Lucky Charms. Like, I know my triggers and I know what I'm a bottomless pit for. Those are literally then the foods that I don't buy in the grocery store and bring into my house. If I'm having a really bad day and I just need to have a double serving of the big cup of Reese's peanut butter cups, okay, fine. I have to get myself in my car, get to the grocery store. Like, it's a bigger effort, right? But guess what? If I have a bad enough day and I need that, I'm going to make that effort. But most of the time it's like, okay, I don't really need that anyways. What else can I find that I already have here, right? Most of the time you're going to, if it's not right there, you're going to find something else. So why not have the choices that you have in your house be something that are the choices that you can have all of the time? When I talk about these things too, I also think it's important to note that this is not just for your athlete. When I do talks and presentations to room fulls of adults, this is the same things I tell them to eat. My kids that are 10 and under, these are the same things that we eat the majority of the time at home. All of the time? Absolutely not. We like to live life too, but what I do is I focus on what I can control in my house, and then I don't worry about controlling what's out of my house. And it has been a really good balance and a really easy way for us to kind of create some structure of balance for our family. Okay, so, you kind of think about that control of environment versus choices. When I do, over the past 5 or 6 years, there's been a handful of times the high schools asked me to come talk at like different health days or senior days or whatever. And, I've probably cycled through at this point talking to probably 300 or 400 students in different presentations over different years. And I always ask them the question, who in this room does your grocery shopping, like your own grocery shopping? And out of all of those students, there will be, I can probably count on one hand over all of those years that have raised their hand and say, I do my own grocery shopping. Which tells me, for the most part, those of you listening to this presentation, you are the ones in charge of the buying decisions for your household. You're the ones most likely going to the store, or even the ones creating the lists and sending them into the store. You have the ability to set up your environment to have everyone be on a new page with regards to health. Okay. So, all that's great. Now it's like, okay, what should we be eating, right? So now we've kind of talked about the setup, the environment, put some framework around the fact that this might all seem really super simple, but the application isn't always easy. Here's my one golden rule, and this is my golden rule, and it will be my golden rule forever because it's simple. Again, simple doesn't equal easy. Choose single ingredient foods. I will also say one ingredient. So when you take a look at, say, the picture here, if somebody was to ask me, hey, what's an apple? You would say apple, right? What's a carrot? Carrot. So that's kind of how you get this theme for single ingredient or one ingredient foods. Choosing foods with one ingredient, okay? And peas. What's in peas? Peas. Shrimp. What's shrimp? It's shrimp, right? And so it greatly simplifies the grocery shopping process to say, okay, we just need to pick single ingredient foods, and then guess what? It's actually okay to eat them separately. It is absolutely okay to eat things separately. You don't have to worry about recipes. You don't have to go through and make this big organized kind of deal. Focusing on the ingredients, having some things prepped and ready to go is going to make a huge difference. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a rule without an exception, because I feel like there's an exception to absolutely every rule. And so that in this particular one, it would be sugar. I would not encourage you to go out and buy bags of sugar, even though it is a single ingredient food. You don't need to have, like sugar cubes up in your cabinet and, just kind of that becoming an option. So that would be the one thing that, yes, it's a single ingredient. Does it have its time and place? Absolutely. But that would be the one that, you just kind of want to watch that a little bit. It gets very sneaky in all of our processed foods. Sugar is highly palatable. It helps with kind of the flavoring of things, especially in the 80s when we had kind of the low fat kick. Fat's bad. We're going to rip fat out of everything. We're going to market it to all of the people that we need a low fat diet, which is just not the case. Fat actually is all of our flavor. And we'll talk a little bit later about the role that healthy fats do play in our nutrition and why they are an important part in kind of our overall health. But that's the one exception would be sugar. Okay. Which kind of leads me to the fact that it's like, okay, even though that's our shopping list that we're going to try to stick to as much as we can, we don't need to be labeling foods as good or bad. We don't need to be labeling foods as this is healthy for me, that's a cheat meal. I can have this, or oh no, I can't have that. Like, actually, yes, you can. You can have everything and anything, but it's about how much of it is it you're eating? How does it go towards your goals? And just overall, what does the bigger picture of your day look like? Okay, so instead of labeling things good or bad, a very easy approach is to label things more of always versus sometimes. Here's my single ingredient list. And maybe slightly expand it with like the Greek yogurt, for example, or cottage cheese. Okay, fine. But you've got this list of go ahead foods versus the ones that are like, okay, these are kind of my sometimes foods. Like, I love sweets and treats and ice cream. I mean, obviously we opened up a popcorn and ice cream shop, but you know what? I actually don't buy a lot from the shop and bring it home. We use that as our opportunity to have an experience, and we go to the shop to consume it. Yeah, and so things like that, you just kind of find a way over time to have some balance. And once you start restricting foods and telling yourself that you can't have something ever, that's where you kind of start getting into trouble. And so a little bit's okay in moderation and sometimes, but just not a whole lot. Now, you may or may not notice that peanut butter does actually happen to be on this sometimes kind of little graphic. And the reason for that is probably not as much for our growing athletes and students. Peanut butter can be a great source of calories, especially for any children that are looking to kind of really gain some size. Peanut butter is very sneaky in that it gets really high in calories really fast. So, and it also will get labeled like almonds and nuts and peanut butter will get labeled as a protein source, and it absolutely is not. It is primarily a fat source. And when we take a look at fats per volume, they are significantly higher in calories. And so they can very quickly put you over a caloric intake number that you're maybe going for, which for student athletes, some of them, they might need that if they're looking to kind of grow a little bit. But as adults, that's just why that peanut butter one is there, is because it's more of a sometimes, and it can catch up really quickly with your calories. All right, so Wendy Earlbeck is pretty highly regarded and shared a lot among strength and conditioning coaches. Not all strength and conditioning coaches have a deep knowledge in nutrition. Most of them definitely don't have a nutrition certification. And so, that ends up being outside of their scope of practice. And so a lot of them just refer to her, and her social media is really spot on. It's specific to athletes. And so you can definitely follow her, find her website. I do actually have my nutrition coaching certification, so I can talk to this a lot more than maybe other strength coaches across the country can, and even personal trainers for that purpose too. But, a lot of her list will align with mine. I'm going to show you hers first, and then mine's just a little bit expanded. So these are kind of a good balance of some of those single ingredient foods, but then they're also for like the quick and easy sources that would be easy for our students to kind of port around. Hard-boiled eggs, jerky, protein shakes, cottage cheese, yogurt, powders to make whey protein. You could do pea protein. There's different types of plant proteins that are options too. Meats, tuna, salmon, chicken. Actually, tuna pouches are really great to have that you could throw in your bag. They don't need refrigeration. And so different recipes with protein oats are great for breakfast. Carbohydrates, got pretzels, different types of fruits, juices. I have a long time shopped for applesauce packets in the baby aisle because they're so easy to just throw in a bag. They don't need refrigeration. They're a fast source of energy. And baby food ends up being a really great choice for kids to have that's super portable. It doesn't require cooking, and then you just kind of throw it away. Healthy fats are very important. And then, of course, we're not only going to make sure we're drinking water, but you want to have a little bit of sodium in your water, which oftentimes we kind of default to Gatorade. Gatorade is probably my least favorite of all of them. I mean, she has Body Armor on here. The quality ingredients is a little bit better with that one. But I mean, if it's between you drinking or not drinking and getting replenished a little bit, I mean, Gatorade's not, in my opinion, the end of the world. Maybe at some point down a health journey, when you really kind of start looking at all of the ingredients, then that definitely could maybe be one that you kind of like take a look at. But just having some different sodium packets, drink water, it's really great. Okay, so here's my list. It's just a little bit longer, but it's kind of the same idea. A lot of them are the same. It just kind of rolls it out a little bit more detailed. This has been my kind of shortened grocery shopping list now for 15 years. As I've been coaching with clients, and I've kind of went through and did, a good variety of ones that I think someone can find something on this list. Maybe not the full length in every specific column, but you can go pick out your favorite 6 to 10 choices in each of these columns and cycle through those, right? And then what oftentimes I'll see is as you start kind of dialing in and embracing this single ingredient kind of like life, if you will, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll try some new vegetables now, because over time your taste buds do actually change. And the same thing happens for our students too. There is something that's really nice and somewhat stress-free about really super planning with your meals. Like simple. It's just simple. And you get into a routine, and then you just don't have to think about it as much. Okay, so now we've talked a little bit about we've set things up. We've given you some short lists as far as like what would be the choices. Well, now let's talk about why. Why are they important? Why are these specific food choices? What are the nutrients in them that are going to make the difference? So carbohydrates are energy. Please, 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 please make sure your children, and you too as a parent, have carbohydrates in your nutrition throughout the day. This is your energy. It's not just your physical energy, it's your brain function. And so I like to look at carbohydrates as they are kind of your immediate source of energy. the times and periods of day that you need to be either physical or mentally available, you need to make sure you're having carbohydrates in your meals around those daytimes. Now, for me personally, when I hit to like mid-afternoon and I'm gonna kind of start winding down for the day, okay, I'm probably actually gonna minimize my carbohydrate sources and focus a little bit more on protein and fats because the energy I need is not as much. I say that, except for right now I'm coaching middle school track and I'm running around for a couple hours now in the middle of the day that I don't do consistently throughout the year. So I've been grabbing a protein bar that has carbohydrates in it on my way over to practice to help get me through when the other, 10 months out of the year, I may or may not be doing that at that point of day. Okay. Protein, it helps us not only rebuild muscles from strength training sessions and from competition, but it is what keeps you feeling full. Have you ever had a meal where you're like, "God, I just ate. Why am I hungry again?" Well, this is probably the reason why. The standard American diet is severely deficient for most people in the area of protein. If there is one area, one column that you can focus on that shopping list and say, okay, this needs to be my area of focus, that's your one takeaway for today, that would be it. Focus on ways that you can increase your level of protein. If you are running through and getting meals out and about, chances are you're not, like, the protein balance in, say, quick drive-through meals is not as high as it needs to be. We need to be supplementing that if we're relying on kind of that as a part of our routine. Protein really helps, and you need it. It also helps regulate your blood sugar. So if you're kind of making sure you're having an eating occurrence every couple hours, a lot of times people will maybe eat something for protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but then you'll forget your snacks. It's also really important to have that protein during your snacks because that helps regulate some things, blood sugar wise, and just helps you feel fuller. That ties you over to your next meal. That way you kind of avoid those instances where you get hangry and you kind of crash a little bit, and then you're just willing to eat whatever because you're so starving, okay? So protein kind of helps fill that build process and then keeps you feeling fuller longer. Fats, okay. This is where we have to debunk all of the very common myths out there about fats. Healthy fats absolutely need a part of your nutrition, and this is for all ages, literally starting with infants all the way up through our elderly. Healthy fats help regulate your hormones in all of your different stages of life. We've got kiddos in middle school and probably still some in high school that are going through puberty. There's a ton of hormonal things going on, and we have to give them the nutrition that it needs for their bodies to go through those transitions as correctly as possible. Different stages in life for males and females in our 40s, 50s, 60s, both men and women, our hormones start changing. Healthy fats help regulate you through those different changes and make sure that you're getting what you need. They also help support brain function kind of consistently all throughout the day. Not that fast source of energy necessarily, but it does help you stay consistently available with that function, that brain function. Fats also help us with our long-lasting energy. Now, fats take a long time to digest. So unlike carbohydrates and even protein that digest quite a bit quicker, those are more immediate sources of energy for your body. They're the ones burning first. Fats, on the other hand, take a really super long time to digest, but even though they take longer, they then end up producing more longer lasting stores of energy. They end up being really super helpful in any of our endurance sports. So you think maybe cross country, where they're doing like longer training runs. It also can be helpful for, say, depending on what position maybe a soccer player is playing, if they're doing pretty consistent, like moderate running back and forth. Maybe not as much as a readily fuel source for, say, volleyball or even football, where everything's kind of like shorter, faster bursts. Basketball is even filled with shorter, faster bursts. Golf, actually, fats can be really super helpful. I mean, you guys are walking several miles to get through your 18 holes. So there is a time and place for all of these. Our athletes all need them, but depending on what they're doing and when and why, it might slightly change the amount of which we are giving them, throughout the day and throughout the different seasons of life. Okay, so it does take some time to learn the nutrition facts for all of these different types of foods. I promise you, it is worth learning. Once you commit it to memory, it just kind of becomes second nature, but it is really important to kind of know a little bit about what's in stuff, what's it, how it kind of fits into your bigger picture, how much of everything you're consuming in its entirety throughout the day. It all really kind of adds up and matters. Because single ingredient foods don't typically come with a nutrition label, MyFitnessPal or other type of health like food tracking apps can be a great resource just as you're kind of like learning what's in different things. And then you can kind of test yourself. You're like, okay, well, I always thought peanut butter was a protein source. I always thought a handful of almonds was protein. Well, you can go look it up in MyFitnessPal and you can very quickly see the total number of fats listed is significantly higher than protein. Well, that's going to tell you then why that falls into the fats category. Okay, so this is great. Now we know the what, we know the why, what's in the nutrients, why does it matter? We're kind of starting now diving into specifics of how much. A great strategy that's actually pretty easy to kind of like implement and follow is taking a look at items with regards to using your hand to help measure. So you look at like a serving of protein is about the size of your palm. You look at like a typical chicken breast, it's about the size of your palm. You look at like probably a half pound patty of hamburger, that might be too much. A quarter pound patty is probably about 25 grams of protein. It's about the size of your palm, right? So then think of your proteins as a piece of fish about the size of your palm. Okay, when we look at veggies, that's the volume of a serving of veggies about a cup. So you could probably fit your cup, your hand, your fist into, a measuring cup that you would have in your kitchen. Carbohydrates, doing a cupped hand. So a serving of carbohydrates is equivalent to, say, about a half a cup of oats, for example. If you just have dried rolled Quaker oats or quick oats, you measure out a half a cup and you could dump that into your palm and you could kind of see, all right, yep, that fills up about a half a cup. And then your fats can be just the length of one of your thumbs. So you look at like a tablespoon of peanut butter, for example. That might be getting you pretty close. So that is one strategy that can be implemented to help you kind of guesstimate serving sizes. Or, there's other strategies too where you can weigh. Some of that gets a little bit detailed and it's just harder. I prefer to not coach around a food scale, mostly because it can be a good tool to learn at the beginning, like serving sizes, if you just want to use it as that, but most people don't travel with their food scales, and so if you become too reliant on it, it can just be kind of tricky long term. But if you want to use it as a tool to kind of start getting really good at eyeballing things, then that could be kind of a short-term thought there. So, okay, nutrient timing. This is specifically around strength training. So this will come into play if your kid is coming to summer weights, if they are in a strength training class during school. This is really, really, really important. So when we take a look at nutrient timing, having something pre-workout is very important. I can very quickly tell if there's a kid that's rolled into weights in the morning and hasn't eaten anything, because their face will go ghost white really super fast and they'll be like, I don't feel so good. And every time I'm like, did you eat anything this morning? And they'll say no. Okay, we need to have some fast and easy sources. I get it. They don't want to sit down and make a big meal and do things in the morning. They need to be sleeping, obviously, as long as they can. But we can have some quick and easy things just ready to go in the morning. Carbohydrates, fruits, oats. Honestly, even like a little juice box of apple juice would be totally fine in the mornings. And a lot of times too, before they go work out, sometimes you don't really want a lot of food sitting in your stomach. I get you probably don't want to sit down and eat a handful of scrambled eggs because that doesn't always settle super well. Even a full banana can sometimes sit pretty heavy, but you have an apple or something lighter, a handful of berries. Fruit juices are really good. Whole grains, I'm a huge fan of oats. There are some different mixes that are like Kodiak protein power cakes kind of mixes. They have great balances of carbohydrates and protein powders kind of built into that mix that you can make into pancakes, into waffles, batch make them, put them in the fridge. Those are even great out of the freezer that you can just kind of have them ready to go. There's also recipes for like protein muffins that you can do from that box that I will batch make. Just spend once a month, a couple hours on a Saturday morning and just make a ton and have a couple different freezer baggies full. One will go in the fridge, one or two will go in the freezer, and we just kind of pull them out, and they're just ready to go for breakfast. Focusing heavily on carbohydrates and protein. Fats don't really matter post-workout. They're not going to digest in time for them to have any benefit, so we don't really actually have to worry about those at all. When we look at post-workout, this is really super important. This is where I can use your help actually a lot with your students in talking to them about how important post-workout nutrition is. They need to be eating their food. They need to be consuming something after their workouts in order to correctly repair from all the damage that was just done by lifting weights, for example. And so protein and carbohydrates are an absolute must in your post-workout meal. And this is really a non-negotiable. Like, if your athlete wants to compete, if your athlete wants to set themselves up to be even slightly better than their teammate, if our teams want to be better than the other teams, if we can nail some of this stuff around nutrition, you're already going to be leveling up ahead of the competition, hands down. So we have to refuel our bodies. Now this is specific to strength training, having this afterwards. This is not just a regular practice, because during a regular practice, they're probably a lot more heavier cardiovascular training related, some sports specific stuff. When we look at strength training as it relates to heavy lifting, the purpose of heavy lifting is to create adaptations with your muscles and to increase your bone density. So when we are lifting weights, our muscles basically kind of get all these little tears in them. We're forcing them to almost break down a little bit by putting all of that tension and pressure on them. Our nutrition is what helps jumpstart that rebuild process. So we want to make sure that they've got that protein for that repair and growth, but then also they've done a lot of exercise, so they need those carbohydrates to replace all of those glycogen stores, which is your most immediate source of energy. And of course, we need to drink our water and or something that's got some electrolytes in it too. Okay, so now we talked about timing. Let's just do a quick introduction then too of like, okay, well, how much for my specific kid? I should have went this a lot bigger for our high school students, but you can kind of see every 5 pounds in body weight, it goes up about 3 kilograms. Every 10 pounds, it goes up 5. So if you have a 200-pound kid, then you would need to add 35 to the 59 to get your kilograms total. So when we take a look at some of these recommendations, a lot of what you will see will be in kilograms body weight. So we have to do this conversion because we like to use pounds here in the United States. Okay, this is going to be a lot of detailed information. For some of you, it is way more than you were expecting, and that's okay. But we do need to start talking about it, and every time you hear me talk about it, every time I come to, I talked about the kids, we're going to start talking about these things because slowly over time, you will pick up more and more and more. So even if this biggest takeaway from today is, okay, we're going to start trying to incorporate some single ingredient shopping. That's it. Start moving the meter with that one simple thing. Awesome. That is enough, and that is perfect. Okay, and then as time goes by, we can look specifically about how much we need to be eating to accomplish certain goals. Okay, so let's start with middle school. With middle school, there is obviously a protein recommendation intake for our 12 and 13-year-olds. The general range is the 1 to 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. Okay, now I have also learned over the years that if we are wanting to build muscle, which in middle school we're not there yet, until you have the hormones thrown in your body that you've got through puberty. In middle school, we're not really building a lot of muscle. Honestly, our focus is more on proper neuromuscular development, what our brain is telling our body to do, and really just getting some muscle memory down with proper mechanics of movement. We need to build our core strength. We need to work on some imbalances from a culture now that sits quite a bit more than we ever used to growing up. And so we don't necessarily need to, in middle school, worry about protein recommendations that's going to help us grow muscle because we don't have the hormones in our body yet to accommodate and for that growth to happen. Okay. So we do need protein though, just to support the growing that we are doing. This isn't specific to what's in the weight room. These kids are growing. It is wild. I'll see them at the end of the school year, miss them all summer, and see them in the fall. I'm like, oh my goodness, you have grown like inches. And it happens that fast, right? I mean, they're your kids. You're seeing them right in front of your faces growing up. Or if you have high schoolers, you remember that period of time. So in this age group, they are still in the middle of that growth and development. But we also want to make sure that the muscle that they do have, that they're going to sustain it through these large growth spurts. So focusing on making sure that we're getting adequate protein intake is really super important. We also need to have carbohydrate intake just to give us energy to run around and play and do the things that we want to do, right? So we are less engaged in intense strength training at this point. We're developing those patterns, those movement patterns, so that they're correct and they keep us healthy and uninjured as we grow. But we do need carbohydrate sources to have energy to be able to do that. Okay. All right. Here's our general then recommendation for our middle schoolers. So the key difference with 12 and 13-year-olds is they're just focusing on growth and development, right? So they do have calorie needs that are maybe higher than it would have been in elementary school because of all of that growth that's happening, but their training intensity is not there yet. Okay. Which is also something I can help. If you have middle schoolers right now, any talk that you can do with them at home, I know they get antsy to want to be in the weight room. I know they do. I get it. It's not the right time for them yet. Doing the simple drills and developing the foundation is where they need to be developmentally appropriate. The loading that happens in this weight room will come. The benefits come after puberty. So there's not a race. They need to focus on where they're at, and we're going to meet them with what they need to build that solid foundation for athletic development in high school. Okay. So they're probably eating more, they're growing, heavy focus on protein, heavy focus on carbs. But yes, even though too, it doesn't really list it on here, they do need to have those healthy fats in there too. The healthy fats will actually significantly help towards increasing their calorie intake to help support all of their growth. So make sure to include that too, because that can help them get their increase in calories through this time. All right, so we're gonna shift to high school. If you do not have if you only have a middle schooler, I still encourage you to kind of stick around and listen through the high school portion, because it gives you a chance to know how this is going to change now in the future. If you're not interested in this yet, then you can kind of skip ahead a few slides when I kind of bring it back together. But we're going to shift very quickly into just some details around high school. And I'm going to kind of go through this information fast. If you want to pause and to actually read all of the information on each of these slides, you're more than welcome to do that. But I'm going to kind of summarize it, and then you'll maybe understand why at the very end. Okay, so with high school, I did actually do some breakout that were sports specific. all of these guidelines I am pulling from the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So this is for our training protocol with our exercises. This is going to be with our nutrition suggestions and recommendations. Everything that I am doing is I am going to closely follow as much as I can the NSCA guidelines. They are the governing body for that CSCS certification. They are considered the organization that is leading the charge in all of these different ways. And they do have these guidelines. And so it gives us that scientific framework to stick to. It's not just my personal opinion. I'm not just taking, okay, these are some strategies that work for adults. Let's just plug them into our kids. Nope, we should not be training our kids like adults. They are not mini adults. They are very early on in their development. They need to be treated as such. They are very infant in their training years, and so they need to be kind of approached that way. So when we take a look at football, a lot of this information too is specifically for you as parents. If I was speaking to a room full of student athletes themselves, I would not be giving them this level of detail. I would not be giving them all of these numbers. I'm actually very hesitant to give students and adolescents numbers to start tracking because it can very quickly escalate into some disordered eating situations, which is obviously not the point. The point is just to have a general understanding and a focus on the types of foods and get some general framework around volume, okay? Not maybe necessarily driving into all of the numbers, but I'm sharing it with you so that you can kind of have a general idea as you're kind of helping guide them. So when we take a look at football, there are some general youth guidelines, but here's the takeaway that you can see it kind of slowly goes up, right? They're a youth, general youth, and they move into active youth, and the amount of which that they consume should grow over time as they're going through different stages. But then, of course, as they're growing as human beings, and then as you grow as a human being, you're moving a larger mass around, so then you need more energy to move that mass, right? So it all kind of logically makes sense once you think about it that way. Okay, so, here, they do kind of say the difference between like a youth soccer and a youth football player, but you'll actually see it's actually relative to their size. They're relative to their size. They're around 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. Okay, same thing there. You've got then just that even distribution. You want to have it kind of cut up throughout the day. Quality of our food matters, sticking to those single ingredient foods, focusing on making sure that they've got post-workout nutrition and just balanced protein, fats, and carbs. Okay. This then kind of shows you just, okay, from even like a freshman to a senior, there's still going to be changes that's going to happen. Like they're going to need more. They're growing, they're getting bigger, but then the demands of their sport also change. Also, too, after they hit puberty, which is key, that's not necessarily the same time frame for everyone, right? After they hit puberty and their muscles are already going to start growing because they've got no new hormones now running through their body, when we start imposing strength training, correctly done strength training, and imposing that demand, they're going to be tearing down their muscle fibers more. And as they get into it more and they push themselves more and they do more damage through strength training sessions, they're going to need more to repair. So it all kind of plays into it. So 14 still needs that steady state of everything. As they become bigger human beings, the level of intensity of which they're working out probably is going to evolve. They're just going to need more. And timing around activity is super important. Okay, volleyball. So here, actually, let's back up a step to point out one thing. So here our range is the 1.3 to 1.6. As they grow older, then it kind of goes 1.6 to 2.2. So, a 14-year-old, though, is probably all going to be generally in that 1.2 to 1.3 range, and then probably going 1.6 to 1.8, right? So let's just say we cut it in the middle and say 14-year-olds need to have about 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Okay, you have to make that conversion from pounds. So, it's age specific, not necessarily specific to the demands of the sport quite yet, although you are now going to see a tiny bit of difference, right? So with volleyball, it's not a contact sport. There's less kind of force production and strength needs. There's power needs and strength needs, but it's in a different capacity, say, than the sport requires for football. So even though there's still around that 1.2 to 1.5 for your 14-year-olds, and it still does grow a little bit for our 18-year-olds, it doesn't maybe get quite as high, and that's just because of the demands of the sport. Volleyball, still consistent overall. So now you can start to see, though, too, there's not a whole big difference between, say, boys versus girls, but there is a difference between 14-year-olds and 18-year-olds, right? And so you can kind of see that. Softball, same thing. We're going to be moving differently in our sport, but then when we take a look at the general ranges between now we've got girls playing two different sports. Generally speaking, though, the nutrition needs of each of those doesn't vary a whole lot, right? Like there's a lot of overlap in these ranges. So it helps you as a parent know, okay, there's maybe not as much variety between sport-specific nutrition, but there definitely is a difference as they grow older. There's going to be more demands on their intake. Overall, it's making sure that we are consistent with our meals throughout the day, and we're focusing on post-workout nutrition for sure. Cross country, range is still about the same. Okay, we have those demands. And even though they're slightly lower of a strength and power-based sport, they still need nutrition for that muscle repair because they're in like the endurance and endurance strength category. They also still need to recover because your body uses a different energy system to be physically active for that consistent length of time that it takes to do like a cross-country race, okay? So carbohydrates do actually end up being a first priority though for your more endurance athletes. And soccer could kind of fall in that too, depending on which position they play in soccer. Cross-country runners, you need carbohydrates. Okay, you definitely want to have a little bit of protein before the race, maybe an hour or two out to help make sure your muscles don't break down during the race. But carbohydrates is what you need. That is absolutely your fuel, okay? And you want to have a tiny bit of protein and carbs in afterwards. Hydration is obviously key when you're that consistently going. Okay, so here's the general recommendations, right? You have a general range. The younger ones are typically lower. The older ones are getting a little bit higher. But if you just think, okay, my kid's growing, they need more energy to move that bigger mass around, then you're kind of where it needs to be. So ultimately, that protein is the piece of the puzzle that stays consistent. We have to have that to protect our energy, to make us stay full, for us to protect all of our muscles. But it's that carbohydrate intake that will drastically change based on the activity that they're doing. But if you remember from very early on when we first switched to nutrition, it's because our carbohydrates are our main source of energy. So if we just remember, okay, our carbohydrates are energy, how much energy do I need in this time of day, this specific event, then you can kind of go around that, okay? So in summary, here's kind of a good ballpark with how much carbohydrates then. So all sports, it's about 5 to 7 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. But your endurance athletes, so the ones that are running consistently and longer, they're probably going to need a little bit more. So continuing that focus on balanced nutrition, protein and fats are mainstay for everybody. They're that foundation. And then it is just that carbohydrate demand based on how much energy they are expending. Okay, so this is about the same. I think I just redid it over from high school, but that's the same. 2 slides there. Okay, so again, feel free to go back and push pause to get the specific details, but that's just kind of the general framework that can help you help your kids. Now, let's talk about water. We've talked about hydration. Water is great. I told the kids over the summer that they needed to drink 2 Stanleys to start in June, and they needed to move to 4 Stanleys in July because it gets hotter, you're sweating more, and you got to replenish that. Water is a great place to start, but it does also help to make sure you're also including some sort of drink that has electrolytes in it, because that sodium is what also helps your body retain that water, and doesn't make you too like overhydrated, and it gives your body a chance to kind of absorb it. So drink water for sure. This is a big change. This is a good change in this generation, is how common water bottles are now everywhere. I personally don't remember carrying a water bottle with me anywhere until I was probably 23. I think it was my senior year of track. All of a sudden I bought a big Nalgene bottle in the bookstore. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll have a water bottle. Before then, I think I roughed it. And then I used water fountains, So this is a good thing that they have, is water bottles are a thing. They've got them with them, which is great. Okay, so now we're going to shift into healthy habits, which water kind of ties us between both. Water is a good healthy habit for everyone, but because you're consuming it, a lot of times it gets included in the nutrition conversation. So let's kind of take a look then about some healthy habits to help your kids with. And the biggest one is sleep. Our kids are not sleeping enough. I can tell you from when I've done presentations, they are not sleeping enough and they need to sleep more. I know that can be challenging. They're busy, they're up late, they maybe have schoolwork, but if there's anything you can do to help them create better habits and routines around getting to bed, they will significantly benefit from that. Because if we take a look at what the National Sleep Foundation's recommendations are, we take a look at our kind of school age kids, which is 6 to 13, elementary, middle school, 9 to 11 hours. When you bump into high school, 14 to 17, 14 to 18, then you kind of bump up to that teen and young adult stage where you're like 8 to 10, 7 to 9. Okay, excuse me. The dark blue is the recommendation. This is not just the hours that you're physically in their bedroom. These are the hours that you're physically sleeping, which means you will have to take some time to like wind down and actually fall asleep. Probably 15 to 30 minutes for most people. It is quality sleep hours. And there are things that we know that either make the quality of our sleep better or can make the quality of our sleep worse. And it does actually make a difference. I told the kids, if there is one thing, I mean, yes, we're talking about food and nutrition and all these other healthy habits, got the water recommendations, but I am telling you, if there is one thing that it's free, and honestly, they have complete control over, is getting to bed, it can be the performance difference between them and beating out one of their classmates. It could be the difference between our teams being more successful than other teams because they are well rested, their bodies are ready to go. There's actually a significant decrease in injury rates for kids that sleep at least 8 hours every single night. So what does it mean though then to get high quality sleep? And it's not just about the hours. That truly is their superpower. And it's free, and it just takes a little bit of rearranging in your schedule and making a habit out of getting it done. I told the kids in middle school track last week to don't take their phones in their room, and I thought they would have probably about thrown tomatoes at me, right? The cell phones have no business in any of their bedrooms. It is significantly inhibiting their ability to wind down to fall asleep. It's also actually decreasing the amount of time throughout the course of the night that they are getting their high quality deep sleep, which typically comes in the first part of the night. If they have had that device with them up until then and they're laying with it in their room and they haven't had a break from that, it really does impact the quality of their sleep early on, which is when the majority of deep sleep happens, which means they're not getting it. So they maybe are sleeping for 8 hours, but they're not getting the quality that they need. Other factors that can help increase the quality of sleep is making sure you have a really super dark room, dark blackout curtains. A lot of times a white noise or sound can kind of help, especially if you live in town and the trains kind of like wake you up at night. Having some sort of like white noise to kind of help block some of that out can be an option to help people a lot. Sleep masks, believe it or not, can be a really super helpful trick on helping create that kind of really super dark relaxation, keeping the light out. I know they look silly. I probably have people that are chuckling and laughing at me right now as I'm talking about them, but they are literally the difference. Years ago, I read an article about Major League Baseball players. At that level, if you're a professional, you are having access to the highest quality coaching, highest quality nutrition, highest quality strength coaches. I mean, they pay the money, right, to get everyone in. And you kind of hit a certain point where everyone is achieving their own max potential because the resources that they have at their disposal are like limitless, right? And there was a group of baseball players that hacked sleep. And they realized that if they could just increase the quality of their sleep by even 10%, a small amount, even 1%, 2%, if they could increase the quality of their sleep, that they were going to get that edge on the competition. And so there was a group of them that all started sleeping with sleep masks, and they started getting that edge because their quality of sleep was improving. Our kids can help. This can help them a lot. Okay. And you know, as parents, it's your house. It is your rules, and absolutely have permission. They don't need their devices. Middle school, high school, they've been without it all day. They are fine. They can have parameters around it. And you know what will happen? When they start to realize how much better they feel in the mornings, when they start to realize how much clearer they can think at school, how much better they're performing in their sports that they enjoy, and they're realizing that, oh, that actually had a negative effect on me that I didn't even realize, they will be fine with giving it up. All right? So it just kind of brings to light all the hours matter. It's not just the 1 or 2 hours that you're at practice. How do you maximize the work that you're getting done in the weight room? All of the rest of the hours matter. It's your sleep, it's your water, it's your quality of your nutrition, it's your food. I should have a number 4 on here that also talks about stress, right? So, you know, stress, their academics, I mean, there's going to be stress there too. That definitely impacts kind of our body and our performance, but you know, all of that plays into it. And so it's really important that we take a look at the big rocks. Those are the big rocks: sleep, water, nutrition, stress management. Those are the big rocks. And if we put all the little stuff in there first, if they keep getting to use their cell phones and get horrible sleep, if they keep getting to do all of like the little things that they maybe think are important, and we're letting them put that in their jar first, and we're forgetting about the big rocks, not everything is going to fit. But if you give them the structure to make sure they're getting in the big rocks first, the things that really actually do matter a lot, then slowly all of the sand, all the little stuff will dip around the ends. They'll fill in the cracks, and look, magically everything can fit in their day. Okay. All right, strength training. Now we're going to move into this a little bit. Why is strength training important? I'm sure it's going through a lot of your heads, but I didn't have to do this when I grew up. I didn't do this when I grew up. We didn't lift weights. If we did, it was for fun. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. But it didn't really matter towards our athletic performance. Our kids today are different. Our kids today have grown up in structured youth practice play. Most of us probably did not even touch a sport till maybe like 5th grade when the high school started having camps. Most of us didn't try more than one sport pretty consistently until middle school came around, right? So that means we had our first 10 to 12 years that we were pretty consistently learning through play. We were out on the playgrounds. We had really dangerous playground structures that we jumped from. We jumped from trees. We got to climb. You know, we did a lot of things differently. We played with friends. We played pickup ball. We had no rules. We just learned as we did, and we just played free. Kids today don't do that. they are much more sedentary just because that's the byproduct of our culture these days. But they also have had so much structured play, so much sports specific structured practice. They have lacked significantly in the development of their just general athleticism. Okay, so we have to bring that back. This strength training and this focus from our administration and giving me the opportunity to build out these strength and conditioning programs is bridging that gap. It is bridging that gap between where they've been missing out developmentally, but where they still need to go to be successful in the sports that they're growing to love more and more every day. Okay. The other thing that it does is it increases the chance of injury by 69%. Now, I should add a caveat to that, and that is proper strength training will reduce injury. When we don't do strength training correctly, when our form is not optimal, when we get allowed to do things that are not perfect form, and we go through the motions, we actually are setting ourselves up for greater injury risk versus making sure that if we're doing strength training correctly, that it can have a significant impact in reducing that injury. So how do we do that? Okay, we're focusing on movement quality. We are here, we're gonna be here probably for a really long time. Focusing on movement quality is never gonna go out of style. And it is the fundamentals and it is literally the foundation. Okay, how do we do that? We gotta build that first. Our kids need to be able to balance. Their core strength is really bad. Joint stability is not great, especially in middle school when they've been growing so much. We got to rebuild those, remodel all of those joints that have been growing now so much. And moving and shifting and changing, and they're growing, so their muscles are stretching, their tendons have been changing. And so we have got to focus on quality of movement and that neuromuscular adaptation for that brain, that muscle memory. Okay, how do we do that? Exercise selection is really super important. Because there are some exercises that are super smart and they're going to give us the adaptations that we want that are safe to choose in large group settings, right? We're not one-on-one training kids in our weight room. We are one-to-many, and exercise selection is important to keep them safe. We can get the adaptations we want, but we have to be really smart in our exercise selection. How we train, how much we train, and when we train, and the intensity also plays into injury prevention. We have to be smart. The days are gone of just bro lift heavy. Bro lift heavy. Just 1 rep max it, man. We just need to lift heavy. No, we don't. That is not a direct indicator of how well they're going to perform on the court, on the field, on the course. It really doesn't matter. What we need to do is we need to be smart. We need to address this as, okay, they're doing strength training because they want to perform better in their sport. How do we get them to do that? We need to have power, explosiveness. Yes, we need to have a base level of strength, but that doesn't mean we're having to do it through 1 rep maxes. Someday, if we do powerlifting competitions, yes, then we need to train for a 1 rep max. But because we are not even close to being there yet, we need to focus on training for performance, which is speed, force production, quality of movement to keep them safe. We also need to understand energy systems and how energy systems come into play with how we do our trainings. The days are also gone that a good workout is because we puked. A good workout is because we're sore. Absolutely not, actually. All of that's also been completely debunked. We have to be smarter and we have to use science and say, okay, actually, no. The energy system they need to use in sport is in this range, which means if we want to train that system, we need to have a work to rest ratio of 1 to 20. That means if they sprinted short distance and it took them 3 seconds, they need to rest for 60 before they do it again, because it gives that system a time and a place to turn down to train it again. There is literally science that backs all of this to train them smarter and to train them safely, okay? And then, of course, we get just into specific details of the sport. So I'm leveraging the NSCA textbook as well as Rebuilding Milo, who was written by a doctor of physical therapy. And he specializes in kind of prehab, which is, oh, my knee kind of bothers me. I'm not injured yet, but I just kind of tweaked it. Okay, or hey, this hip is always tight, or like the back of my knee is always kind of tight. Okay, well, let's like do some evaluations and let's incorporate some exercises that can maybe help you get stronger in an area before it becomes an injury. How do we do that prehab? We can do that. We are going to do that. That's exactly what we're doing. So in our NSCA book, we've got guidelines then here around what proper mechanics of different exercises look like. We also then in the Rebuilding Milo, we've got here's some kind of shoulder injury prevention things that we can do. Here's how we test our hips, work on hip mobility. Things are to textbook. Now, yes, there might be some limitations around our bone structure, injuries, things like that. Yes, everyone's squat's going to look a little bit different. But I am going to work with each student to get you as close to textbook as possible. Whether we realize that your ankle mobility is your limiting factor, maybe your hip mobility is your limiting factor, maybe it truly just is like your bone structure. So we take a look at this next slide. Everyone's squat looks different because our bones are different. It's not whether or not we're trying hard or right enough. It's all about in our form. Maybe we need to turn our toes out a little bit more. Sometimes our heels need to be a little bit farther apart. Some kids do a little bit better with a sumo squat. And so we have to get at least a parallel to get full ranges of motion. But our bones can be that factor, but we can work through that, and it's okay. One big change in the weight room is we are switching everything over to velocity-based training. This is great because what this does is it actually takes in consideration how well they slept the night before. Did the basketball bus get in at 11 or 12 o'clock at night? And now they rolled out of bed and now they're showing up at block 0, but you can tell they're tired. If I write programs that are strict percentages off of 1 rep maxes, which is actually for decades been the very traditional way to write strength training programs, it does not take that into consideration. We've all been there. We all have days that we feel great. We all have days that we don't feel great. And that could be from a variety of factors. Maybe our nutrition's on a point. Maybe we didn't drink enough water yesterday. Maybe it was sleep. Maybe we had a really super stressful test the next day and we're still carrying that stress today. What velocity-based training allows for us to do is know that the speed of the bar trains different areas. And so it takes the guesswork out of how much weight we should be putting on the bar, and it's strictly about how fast you're moving it, and it's going to force different adaptations. So I'm so excited to bring this in. It is something that if there are weight rooms in the state that are not yet doing it, they told me when we had our annual clinic, I'm not, but I want to. I'm not, but that is like the next thing. The technology is now allowing us to do that because they've got devices that are pretty affordable to outfit. But there are a couple programs in the state that have exclusively implemented this, and I've talked to them and I've learned a lot from them. And we are just now at a really good time with me coming in, being new, being able to launch this right off the bat because one, we have block scheduling, which gives us the time. I've got them then for all semester. Sometimes there's just limitations around scheduling with different school systems. And sometimes there's a strength PE coach that has been doing strength and weights for 20 years. And they also are like, I want to do it, but it's hard for me to change, right? Because that's a whole new thing too. So this is where we're going. It allows for us to monitor performance, rest. Rest is absolutely part of the program. I've had kids this semester where I've been like, okay, last 10 minutes, we just need to walk, move. That's part of your recovery. It's not just about sleep, but it's having kind of your days where you're focusing more on recovery and mobility. It's not about going 110% all of the time. We are working smarter, not harder. It's not about how sore we're getting. It's about doing the right things that are going to make them the best. Okay. So as we look to summer strength conditioning, the schedule, the times are very similar to what they've been in the past. We have a red team, a white team, and then we'll have middle school. So our red team is going to be all of our high school boys except for cross country in June. Our white team is going to be all of our high school girls plus the whole cross country team. And then our middle school session is going to be those students that are entering 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It's going to be open to you guys. Okay. So That's our June schedule. In July, because of the demands of fall sports, July is when we are going to move into more sports specific programming. And just as we took a look at the number of kids that play each of the different sports and how the programming will change to best get them ready for their sport going into the fall, our July schedule is going to look a little different. So we'll have red and white will be combined at the 7:10 time, except if you play football in the fall. If you play football in the fall, then you are going to go to an evening only strength training session. And you're going to have some then specific football work with Coach Peterson afterwards. Okay, so that is what we're going to look like. New also this year, as we kind of talked about nutrition, the importance of nutrition, we are going to be including a post-workout bar or shake, and this is going to be required. They are going to be leaving with something in their stomachs. So moms, dads, if you can help me with that conversation of just getting them to understand why. I do know that we've got some picky eaters. I do know, especially with probably our females, they always kind of wonder about eating. Trust me, eat your food. Eat it. I promise you it will make you better, okay? So we already kind of talked about all of the benefits of why post-workout nutrition is crucial. It helps with that recovery. It replaces your glycogen. Some of them are going to go to different practices afterwards, seeing me in the summer. Some of them are going to go to jobs. They've got to eat, okay? If we don't do that, we're going to have weaker adaptations over time. We're going to increase our chance of injury. We're going to plateau, and we're just not going to get that fully recover. They're going to be fatigued, and it's really not going to be beneficial then really for them. So it kind of asks the question, so then are you better off just not strength training at all? Like if you're going to choose to skip the post-workout nutrition, would you be better off just not coming at all? And the answer is actually potentially. I mean, not necessarily though, right? So it has its benefits that you could maybe get some of them still, but you're not going to get the maximum out of it. Like if you're going to choose to show up in the mornings, you're going to choose to actually do the workout, you need to follow it. Like that is literally part of the workout is your post-workout nutrition. So we really don't want to set them up for that. So the real takeaway is training plus nutrition is proper recovery, right? If we're not doing that, we're going to be super inconsistent and increase fatigue, and our injury rates are going to probably increase too. So we don't want that. So because we're going to be now including post-workout nutrition, we're also going to be including a t-shirt this summer. We do have a charge for the summer program this year. It's $40 per student, but you have 8 weeks. We're going Monday through Thursday, 4 weeks in June, 4 weeks in July. It's a total of 32 workouts. All right, so it's a little over $1 a workout, but they're going to make sure that they're leaving with something in their tummy. They're going to have a t-shirt, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be a lot of fun, okay? We do have attendance. This is specifically for our high schoolers. We do have an attendance goal of 80% to earn the Iron Husky Award. With the girls last year, we also did badges for effort. If you haven't heard this about me yet, I am really big on effort. Everyone's physical limitations are different. Your natural ability, what you can or cannot do around injuries, I get that. Like, absolutely. But what you can't fake is your effort. And I'm really big on effort. I'm really big on quality and dedication to being the best that you can be. Please don't, if your kid does not want to show up in the morning, please don't sign them up. If they don't want to be there, if they're not going to want to put the effort in, you are wasting your $40. It's okay. Don't register them. Let them have the summer off. But if they're ready to put the work in, and it'll be fun and they will get better, I promise, but they have to be ready to come with the effort. I will send kids home. I will send them home. If they show up and they don't want to be there, if they don't pay attention to what I'm asking them to do, I will absolutely send them home packing. And they can come back and try the next day if they want. But, I just don't waste your money. Have the conversation with them before. Make sure they're going to be in it to be there, because it's going to be different than previous summers in that we're doing some new things, and I need them to be fully available and fully willing to try the new things. Okay, so registration is now currently live on the Aurora Sports website. So if you go to aurorasports.org/registration, you can find it, or you can also sign the QR code And then if you have registered for a youth program before that uses it, sign in. Otherwise, create a new profile to get them signed up and ready. Communication is also going to be done through the app, the Aurora Public Schools app. It's going to be set up as a classroom so that you can see communications through there. All right, questions. We had some questions around food aversions. I included that now on the registration form. So if you have food aversions, make sure to include that so we can see if we can work around that, what the plan could be for that. Attendance for middle school, come as much as you want. And honestly, for high school too. I want to see them as much as they want to be there, but I also know it's summer for families and you've got other things going on. And so they do get an opportunity to have excused absences if it's school, family, or church related, but they have to communicate that with me before. They will understand kind of that process. And so there's that. But if you have any questions between now and registration, you can get a hold of me by my school email. Here is the presentation for middle school, specifically only middle school. You can push pause if you need to take a picture of it. Here is the QR code for just the high school information. I kind of combined them to do this recording. So if you want to go back and look at anything specific, those were kind of the separate ones I did during the live session. And so then that's it. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sitting through all of this. I hope it was valuable. Hope you have some key takeaways. If you do need to get a hold of me between now and then, before registration, when the classroom gets set up, then all of our communication will be through the classroom. But I'm available via email, which is ssutherland@4hourhuskies.org. Ask me what questions you have, and we'll be sure and get them answered. So thank you again for your time. I really look forward to working with your student athlete. I do truly believe they all have greatness in them. And I have a passion for bringing that out in each and every one of them. I want them to do it safely, but it's really fun to watch them grow. The help I can get from you is getting their mindset ready to work. It's not going to come easy. I am very difficult sometimes because I have specific instructions that I expect to be followed, and I expect max effort. I expect teamwork, and they need to be held accountable. And so, we're going to bring all of that to the weight room, and that's just kind of my personality in general, but they will be great, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope to see them. I can't wait to work with them. And again, reach out if you have any questions.